Malik Washington out of Virginia. Bit of an interesting career, obviously slightly undersized, 5'8", 194 pounds, but this last year, absolutely phenomenal. Over 130 targets, 1,300 yards. It's not very often you see a player with yards per route run over 3 and targets per route run over 30%. Are you a big Malik Washington fan?
I am. You just mentioned about who's my favourite out of these sleepers coming up into this year's draft, and we've started off with my favourite right at the very top, Malik Washington. He is a guy that I'm more than happy to keep banging the drum about. Obviously, I think when you look at the original stats and you look what he's done over his college career, it kind of didn't look too great at the start. He was over at Northwestern. Didn't really get going early on in his season, early on in his career, but then the transfer over to Virginia, that's where we've really seen that breakout performance this past year. But with that's obviously going to affect things like the breakout age. Obviously, didn't really do too much early on, but now starting to show up this past year gone by. And as I say, he's definitely a guy that I'm more than happy to get on board with this year, and where you can get him in your rookie drafts. I think it's going to be a great value. Looking forward to seeing where he lands, what kind of draft capital he gets. But as a prospect, love him. You mentioned the fact that he's kind of limited to that slot only role, and he obviously has played a large part of his career in the slot. But I think he has got that ability to play out wide. I know in his final year at Northwestern, 21% outside. So showing that he can do it. Might not always get that role, obviously, with his size. You feel like he's going to be nailed down to that slot role in the NFL. But I do think he's a little bit more than just that short yardage underneath kind of guy. But he does that brilliantly. So let's not knock the fact that he is great in the slot, doing those short routes. And what he does after the ball is what really gets me excited. A little bit like how we mentioned with Puka and Nacua, obviously not comparable in the size, but I think in what they do with the ball in the hands is what gets me excited. It's the kind of prospect that I get really excited about when digging into these sleepers. So starts as a slot wide receiver, but when he's got the ball in his hands, he converts into a running back. The ability to make guys miss. Led college football in missed tackles force last year. The yard after the catch ability, the yards per route run, it's all up there with some of the best wide receivers in this upcoming class. So I'm really excited by him. I know there's knocks obviously with the size, as I mentioned, the late breakout age, and the fact he's kind of limited to that slot role. But yeah, Rich, he's definitely a guy that I'm looking forward to see what he can do when he steps into the NFL.
Yeah, I think he's a really interesting prospect, isn't he? As you said, as soon as you see that size, people are going to throw out the slot only comparison. I've got on the screen here, he's a question mark. I think he's probably going to start in the slot. I do wonder if he could maybe play that kind of Z, the flanker role.
Mm-hmm.
You know, could he be in that sort of Tank Dell, Zay Flowers-esque, where he's going to get 60% of his snaps out of the slot, but he can still go out wide and get options. But I think you hit the nail on the head. He's lightning quick, incredibly agile. If he is going to run out the slot and have that two-way go on corners, it's going to be really difficult to cover him. I think the other thing, he's got some of the best hands in this class. Like some of the catches he made, not just, there were a few highlight grabs in there, but they were just consistent grabs away from his frame. Not a big guy with a big catch radius at 5'8", but his ability to contort his body and make those more challenging catches, I think, makes him play bigger than his frame. So I'm really excited about him. I really like him. I think it's going to be fascinating to see what the NFL think of him because, as we said, he is a slightly older prospect at 23. There is that potential slot-only question mark. If he gets into day 2, I'm going to be really excited to grab him in rookie drafts. If he does fall into that kind of day 3 range, it does start to worry me, and I think the NFL is kind of showing what we think of him as such. So, the draft capital is going to be a big one for me with Malik Washington. I'm not so much concerned about landing spot because I think he's going to have he's a prototypical slot plus almost. And I think that, let's be honest, any team in the league can probably do that. So I think landing spot less so, but draft capital is definitely a big thing for him. We are closing in on 1,850 subscribers, as you can see on the screen. If you've not hit that subscribe button down below, it takes a second. It helps us out, and you make sure you get all of our content that is coming up into your feed. And of course, we've just announced our partnership with Underdog. Tom's going to be live streaming plenty of streams with the guys over at Underdog. Got some really exciting bestball content about to drop as soon as all the big contests kick off. So hit subscribe and make sure you're not missing out on that.